had an opportunity to fly the new Quest Kodiak 100 Series 2 from the company's factory in Sandpoint, Idaho to Santa Monica, California. Our journey would take us over some of the highest terrain in the continental U.S. and end in Southern California, where Quest dealer Clay Lacy Aviation awaited delivery of its newest Kodiak and provided the airplane for this evaluation. Quest Marketing Director and Chief Demo Pilot Mark Brown met me at Sandpoint and arranged for a factory tour before our departure. For a small aircraft manufacturer, Quest is highly vertically integrated, making almost every part at Sandpoint, including crafting 40% of machine parts in-house. I climbed into the left seat and noticed the great visibility thanks to the height of the aircraft. Propeller clearance is 19 inches. Starting the Pratt & Whitney Canada PT6A-34 is easy, and within minutes we were ready to taxi. Today's flight, while relatively routine for the Kodiak, would be just a taste of what the airplane can do, but it showed me that the Kodiak is tremendously flexible. It fits into the comfortable transportation category with handsome interior furnishings, but quickly transforms into the utility role where landing on a dirt strip in the middle of nowhere is just a normal operation. Of course, the Kodiak can land almost anywhere, with optional straight or amphibious aeroset floats available, and it can carry more cargo with installation of the optional belly-mounted cargo pod. Liftoff came quickly and the Kodiak levitated off the runway almost before I was ready. Best rate of climb speed is just 99 knots at sea level, slightly lower at Sandpoint's altitude, and delivers a climb rate of about 1,200 feet per minute and maximum takeoff weight. After liftoff, I set the climb attitude to 10 degrees and once reaching 85 knots, raised the flaps to 10 degrees, then at 95 knots, flaps 0. I climbed at 104 initially, then sped up to 115 knots because we were expecting some icing. At our light weight, the Kodiak zoomed up at 1,650 feet per minute. Leveling off at 12,000 feet with the Garmin GFC 700 autopilot switched on, true airspeed settled at 173 knots, while the engine was burning 336 pounds per hour. The best place to look for indications of ice accumulation are the tires, according to Mark. The white ice contrasts sharply with the black rubber. We activated the TKS Ice Protection Surface Prop switch, which forces glycol-based liquid through tiny holes drilled in cuffs attached to the leading edge of the wings and empennage, and through outlet pipes next to each propeller blade. The spray from the propeller generally keeps the windshields clean, Mark said, so it isn't always necessary to switch on the windshield TKS. Eventually the clouds dissipated, and we were in the clear for the rest of the flight. Speed crept up to 180 knots, and fuel flow 333 pounds per hour, with the ISA temperature at plus 5 degrees at 12,000 feet. The air was smooth as we crossed from eastern Oregon into northern Nevada, and it wasn't long before we spotted some unusual circular markings on the flat desert floor below us, sort of like the Nazca lines in Peru that used to fascinate me as a kid. A quick look at the map confirmed that we were flying over the Black Rock Desert, location of the annual Burning Man Festival, which hosts a pop-up airport on the table-like desert floor. The prospect of an off-airport landing on the site of the Burning Man proto-city proved irresistible, and we canceled our IFR flight plan, chopped the power, and descended. Before setting up for the landing, which Mark would do because it was off-airport, I slowed the Kodiak to get a feel for low-speed handling and did some stalls. The Kodiak is no lightweight airplane, but while the controls are a bit heavy in pitch, it handles much like a big piston single, for example a Cessna 206, with a heavy engine up front. Pulling the power back, I slowed the Kodiak and dropped the flaps, and held the nose up to bleed off airspeed. The Series 2 Kodiak now includes a safe flight angle of attack system, with the indicator mounted in the line of sight on the glare shield, just to the left of the center post. While I like having angle of attack, I also like an airplane that lets you feel the flow of air over the wings, and the Kodiak does let you know when that flow is weakening. The Kodiak stalls gently, which is expected with its cuffed outboard wing design, and this helps maintain flow as long as possible over the ailerons. I added power and turned while pulling the yoke back to try to induce a reaction, and the Kodiak just held altitude and even climbed a bit while I kept the yoke back as far as I could in more than a 30-degree bank. There was no wing drop at all during the stall. The Kodiak's maneuverability, especially at slow speeds, is a huge safety benefit and gives pilots fat margins for flying in tough terrain. For landing on an unfamiliar off-airport location, it's not a specific airstrip because the desert is flat for miles. Mark likes to touch down on the main wheels with full flaps and nose high, and feel the quality of the ground before fully committing to the landing. He brought the Kodiak smoothly down to the surface and rolled the big tires along the desert floor, then allowed the full weight to settle on the wheels and brought the nose down. Surprisingly little dust blew up as we coasted to a halt. The temperature was comfortably cool when we climbed out after shutting down the engine, and an enormous silence made it feel like we were the only humans left on Earth. I took off from the Black Rock Desert and we climbed to 11,500 feet and headed to Truckee Airport near Lake Tahoe for a quick fuel stop. After refueling, we took off for Santa Monica. Our route took us over Yosemite National Park, and the clear weather gave us perfect views of Half Dome and Bridal Veil Fall. Descending in the busy airspace over Simi Valley and Van Nuys, I brought the Kodiak down to 2,000 feet over the beach near Pacific Palisades and called Santa Monica Tower, which cleared us to land on the now shortened runway 21. For short field landings, VREF is a low 74 knots, but for normal operations, 80 to 85 knots is the target. From the cockpit, the nose seems to sit a little low, so touching down on the main gear requires a decent amount of pull to get a proper flare. I would need more practice at this, and my landing was almost a three-pointer, with the nose touching right after the main wheels. Gusty winds didn't bother the Kodiak at all, and it was easy to plow through the bumps and put it right on the center line. Soon after this trip, Clay Lacey moved the Kodiak to its East Coast operation and fitted the Kodiak with floats to demo the aircraft's amphibious capabilities. I had a chance to go flying with Mark a second time and got to experience the pleasures of Kodiak flying on the water. The Aeroset floats fitted to the Kodiak are carbon fiber and easier to maintain than metal floats, and also much less prone to water ingestion, Mark explained, because they are manufactured in two pieces and have no seams or rivets. The composite floats weigh 400 pounds less than metal floats, and they are not subject to corrosion issues. The wheels have sealed bearings that are maintenance-free, and the control cables leading to the water rudder run outside the floats for simpler maintenance. Floats do add some drag, and the Kodiak cruises about 15 to 20 knots slower, but Mark says that it still flies really well.
It's got the same STOL capabilities as the Kodiak on wheels, so it's off the water very quick. Fully loaded, I'm off the water in about 20 to 24 seconds. And it's got the same great climb performance that it has on wheels. It's still stable. It's super fast for a float plane. I can cruise around at 160 knots. I can carry up to 10 people, a pilot plus 9 passengers. So all in all, it's kind of the most versatile airplane there is. If you find a cool spot to land, you can land, put it down, dock it, and have lunch, and then be on your way.
Landing the float-equipped Kodiak is easier on water, Mark said. On land, the airplane presents a large amount of surface area to crosswinds, which can be challenging. It's so tall the floats catch any bit of wind, he said. On water, of course, it's almost always possible to land into the wind. When setting up for a water landing, Mark always overflies the landing zone to check for debris or shallow water or other traffic such as boats and personal watercraft. And of course, the all-important checklist includes the words, "Gear is up for water landing."
If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Also, visit AINonline.com and check out our e-newsletters for all the latest on the aviation industry.